Hey guys, we're back for another 1010XL Countdown to National Signing Day, brought to you by Island Doctors. I'm Lauren Rew, alongside Ryan the Hacker Green. Hacker, appreciate you stopping by today.
Lauren, always enjoy it.
Absolutely. All right, let's start first with the Gators. It was a busy weekend. Tell me what's been going on.
Yeah, some Gator commitment news. The 2020 class, I guess, is the biggest piece of news. Leonard Manuel, a four-star wide receiver from the Ocala, Florida area. Big kid, Lauren, 6'4", 200-pound wide receiver. He's committed to Florida, top 10 wide receiver nationally for the 2020 class. For 2019, which I know what Gator fans are interested in, National Signing Day, about 2.5 weeks away. Now, no commitments over the week for 2019, although a little interesting piece of news, Charles Moore, defensive end, who was committed to Mississippi State for a long time, has recently decommitted from the Bulldogs. He did visit Florida. He says Florida now is in his final three. They will have one of the hats on the table when Moore, a four-star defensive end from Mississippi, commits. It'll be Florida, it'll be Tennessee, it'll be Auburn. Interesting thing about Moore, he said Florida knocked Florida State out of his top three.
Wow.
So Gator fans, at least you did that. We'll see what happens, but Moore would be a coup to get. Again, he was a Mississippi State commit for quite some time.
I'm asking you to look at a crystal ball here, but your best guess of where he ends up going.
The fact that he visited Florida, I think, is a good sign, although I think Auburn might be tough to beat there. I also think Tennessee is very much in the mix as well. Decommitting from Mississippi State was interesting because he had been committed there for so long, so maybe there's a Dan Mullen situation going on. But I think Florida's probably still a long shot to get him. But as we know, you never really know when it comes to recruiting.
In terms of guys who are committing for the 2020 class, how much stock and how much confidence are these coaches putting into the fact that they've got these kids now, but they may or may not be with them when it comes to actually signing day?
When you cover recruiting, Lauren, when a 2020 kid commits or a 2021 kid commits, you take notice of it. But I don't drop everything and pick up the phone right away like I would when the 2019 young man commits. I mean, we're over a year away. Well, at least 11 months till National Signing Day in December of this year. So a lot of time for these kids to change their opinion, a lot of time for these kids to change their mind. But it is noticeable that Florida is a top 3 class nationally. In the class of 2020, I believe they have 7 or 8 kids already committed, many 4-star prospects. Dan Mullen doing a really good job. We'll see if it lasts.
Some of the reasons these kids decommit from these original commitments can be because of coaching changes, right? Alabama defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi is headed to Cleveland to do essentially the same thing there with the Browns. How much effect do you think his departure from Alabama will have on the current commits and maybe the ones in the future?
There is one kid, Chris Bogle, a 4-star defensive end from Fort Lauderdale, committed to Alabama during the Army All-American game. Florida and Alabama were really in his final 2. He commits to Alabama. Now, all of a sudden, the defensive coordinator is gone. So, will that affect Chris Bogle's decision? He's got 2.5 weeks or so till he signs. We'll see. The thing with Alabama, it's interesting. It's not only the defensive coordinator. It's like 5 or 6 offensive coaches as well. And I'll just throw it out there. Just keep in mind, Mandarin, their quarterback, Carson Beck, 4-star young man, just led Mandarin to a state championship in 2018. He's been committed to Alabama for quite some time. With all these offensive coaches leaving Alabama.
You think there could be a chance? I guess there's always a chance.
There's always a chance. I think it's certainly something to take note of, particularly if you're a fan of Florida or any other team in this region. With a Jacksonville young man in this situation, again, I don't know of anything per se that's going to happen, but it's something to notice when all these Alabama assistants are leaving.
Well, it's only fair if the coaches that brought them in, I mean, again, we talked about this last week, you hope that a kid commits to the school and not to the coach, but the reality is if somebody brings you in and has specific plans for you and then they're gone, essentially your ally in a sense is also gone. So it'd be interesting to keep an eye on him for sure.
Yeah, when these assistants leave, these head coaches leave, I think the young men should be let out of their letters of intent. If they sign a week before a coach leaves, that to me is ridiculous. I think the NCAA needs to look at that.
Now, Carson Beck is not the only kid in this area to have to be committed to an SEC school, and his in Alabama, the quarterback. Tell us about the other one.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Jacksonville, Lauren, Carson Beck at Mandarin, committed to Alabama. Jeff Sims, quarterback at Sandalwood, talked to that young man for a story on 1010XL.com. I already had an LSU offer, Louisville, Boston College, a lot of great offers. Received a Georgia offer this week. In fact, is visiting the Georgia Bulldogs in the next week or two. I don't know how many towns, cities in America have 2 high school quarterbacks, one committed to Alabama, another one with offers like Georgia, like LSU. Goes to show you the talent here in Jacksonville. Keep in mind, those young men play each other. Jeff Sims at Sandalwood, Carson Beck at Mandarin in the same district. That's going to be a lot of fun when high school football returns.
Quarterbacks are a big part of our conversation today, and one part of the 2019 class at Alcorn State. Tell us about Cameron Sapp. Almost called him Warren Sapp, but wrong Sapp.
Yeah, Cameron Sapp at Lee. Very happy for this young man. Committed to Alcorn State. It's another story I wrote for 1010XL.com. Alcorn State started recruiting him the spring semester of his freshman year. They've been on him for many years. A long time. He ends up verbally committing to Alcorn State, plans to sign with them on National Signing Day. Of course, remember Alcorn State, the great Steve McNair at Alcorn State. So there's a young man, Cameron Sapp, from Lee High School going to Alcorn. Talked to Cameron Sapp a couple days ago. Lee's the only team in Florida that beat Raines and beat Mandarin last year. Raines, the eventual 4A champion. Mandarin, the eventual 8A champion. Lee beat both of them. Goes to show you the talent that Lee had 1 year ago.
It's impressive. The talk of most people right now regarding anybody in college has been the transfer portal. That's going to be becoming a drinking game. Every time you hear somebody says transfer portal, as someone enters the transfer portal, it should become something that we should have libations with. But the latest with Florida State, James Blackman coming out of nowhere, deciding to put his name in this portal?
That caught me off guard a little bit. I was surprised by that, although the writing's on the wall when DeAndre Francois decides to come back. I don't know if Blackman transfers. I think he's testing the waters a little bit to see what ultimately is out there. We know Francois apparently is back in the fold. Florida State did not recruit a quarterback in 2018. Did not get a quarterback for the class of 2019. Now, they have a Louisville transfer coming in, but that's about it. Florida State has issues at quarterback, and if James Blackman were to leave, he mentioned he is in the transfer portal, Francois gets hurt, they got massive issues at quarterback, so not a lot of depth at the quarterback position for the Noles going into this season.
With the amount of young men going into the transfer portal, how much of an effect do you think that will have on how recruits choose their commitments or make their commitments, if any effect at all?
Well, think about how much time 1010XL, all of us here, talked about Justin Fields going to Georgia. How much time we talked about Tate Martell going to Ohio State. It's all for naught a year later. Justin Fields out of there. Tate Martell out of there. If you're a 4 or 5 star quarterback, you don't play right away, you're leaving to go to, friendlier venues. So it's fascinating all the time, all the talk about these 4 and 5 star quarterbacks. If they don't get on the field instantly, they're finding better options for themselves.
It seemed that the game has changed so much, and the recruiting game has changed so much, that these guys want to play right away, and if they don't, and I can't decide how I feel about it. I understand from their perspective, it's their 4 years to get their eligibility and a 5 to get 4 in, and if they're not going to be able to play where they thought they would be able to play for whatever reason, I have a hard time saying, well, that's not fair, and he should have to wait it out. But I think there are some lessons to be learned either way.
Yeah, I know. I mean, kids want to play, and kids know they can play. They feel they can play. If it's not at a Power 5 school, they can certainly play somewhere else. You're not going to waste all your eligibility sitting on the bench when you can go somewhere else and show the pros what you can do.
All right, let's wrap things up with some congratulations to Marty Lee of First Coast High School going into the Florida Athletic Coaches Association Hall of Fame.
Great story. Marty Lee, you can check this out on 1010XL.com. It was also on the Preps podcast that I did. The newest inductee, the newest Jacksonville inductee to the 2019 Florida Coaches Athletic Association Hall of Fame. Really happy for Marty Lee. He's done a great job at First Coast High School. He joins the likes of Corky Rogers at Bowles, Kevin Sullivan, Joey Wiles, great coaches in our area, being honored going into the Hall of Fame. Kudos to Coach Lee. Great work at First Coast.
Now, we normally shoot these videos on Thursdays, but next week you guys will be on the road. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah, Senior Bowl coverage in Mobile, XL Primetime at the Senior Bowl. Looking forward to being out there. We're going to catch up with Daniel Jones, quarterback at Duke, Jarrett Stidham, the quarterback at Auburn, Drew Locke from Missouri, Will Greer from West Virginia. Countless seniors in Mobile for the Reese Senior Bowl. We'll have you covered on XL Primetime all week long.
All right, Hacker, appreciate it.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right.